If you're in the process of contemplating divorce, you're separated, you are divorced, one of the things that you know is that this season of your life is all about transformation, starting over, and transitioning into what you want next. I'm excited to share today's guest with you. It is all about helping you navigate those big transitions and starting over. Welcome to the Crazy Ex-Wives Club, a podcast dedicated to helping women navigate the emotional journey that is divorce. I'm your host, Erica, and if you're trying to figure out life after the big D, welcome to the club. Whether you're contemplating divorce or dealing with the aftermath or any of the many phases in between, the club has got you covered. Each week, you'll hear stories from women who have been in your shoes. This isn't about spilling tea on divorce details. This is about giving you the tools to take control of your own healing journey. Listen in weekly for advice, tips, and tools to help you move through each stage of the process. Hello, welcome to another episode of the Crazy Ex-Wives Club. I'm your host, Erica, and today we have Deborah Donenfeld with us. Now, Deborah is a coach for starting over. I love that, Deborah, in your description. You're based out of New York, but you help people navigate these big, transitions, transformations that happen. And they happen whether or not you get divorced. We hit midlife, right? I see all my married friends go through it too, that they're like, is this it? Is this what I've spent all these years building? And you start to look at, what do you want? How do you move into the other pieces? And if divorce is in there, as it was in your story as well, it forces you to have to rework all these places. So welcome, Deborah.
Thank you so much. Yes, I think you really hit it on the head. Like the midlife is the time. All these changes happen, whether we want them or not, or we start to question things. Yeah, so it's a time that we are growing and changing, and on the inside, and our outside reflects that.
Yeah. And so you are also a fellow divorcee. So tell us a little bit about your story, because we know that the divorce causes us to learn a lot about ourselves and also causes a lot of change.
Definitely, definitely. So, and it's why I do the work I do, because I went through such a difficult time, as so many of us do. So my story is that at the time that my husband and I were planning to divorce, right at the exact moment that we were going to be telling our children, I found out that his business had completely tanked and he had zero money in his business account. And we had like enough to pay the next mortgage payment. That was it in our personal. So that was a huge shock. We ended up putting off telling the children for a little while, for just a few months. The apartment that I thought I was going to stay in with my children, now clearly we were going to have to sell. So we were going to have to move. I was going to have to uproot my children. We had no money. I had to think about shifting my career because I couldn't pay for everything for our whole family. I couldn't support our whole family on only my income. So I had to make a lot of changes and look for other work. And plus we were getting divorced. So it was all of these changes at once. Any one of those changes are enough to sort of throw you for a loop. And navigating all of these, and I just nose to the grindstone. I did everything I needed to do pragmatically to make everything happen, to look for work, to find a new apartment, to take care of my kids, to put food on the table. And I leaned in really, really hard to all the soft skills. So kept up my yoga practice. I did a trade for yoga, kept going to therapy, read all the self-help books, did my morning practice religiously every day, journaling and meditating, and just leaned in super hard to that because it made me feel like I had purpose. I was doing everything I could on all levels. And it would have been so nice to have a guide. I didn't have a guide. So I'm trying to be that guide.
Yeah, I love that. I feel so similar to you. When I was in my 2 years of separation, I leaned heavy into those healing practices. I had done a lot of different daily practices around appreciation and gratitude practices, right? And the magic, like true magic that came from after you're doing a little simple gratitude focus every day for 30 days. the way that everything starts to look different around you is amazing. And I confess that as other things demanded my attention, those were the pieces that started to get dropped. And so it is hard to find that balance between the things we have to get done. We have to make the calls,
Right.
we have to go apply for the jobs, we have to figure out the money issue. And so this softer side of, the woo side of, well, do I really need to journal? Do I really need this 15 minutes of meditating?
Do I really have the time to do it?
Yeah, and I still get stuck in that, as you can imagine growing a business, some days I'm like, "Oh, I have to just do this one more thing." I really actually have to go do my yoga or go for my walk so that I'm in a better place because those pieces create the mental peace that enables us to make the decisions we wanna make.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that piece you brought up about gratitude, it is really so, so important. But I think that sometimes even that gets a little bit distorted into, oh, I can't have these negative thoughts. I can't have negative feelings. Let me bring myself back to gratitude. And the gratitude is really important, but you can't like push away or ignore the other feelings that are coming up either. Yeah, those have to be processed and you can't sort of pretend them away, right? I had a teacher who she used to say, it's about what's in your mental atmosphere. That's what you're attracting. So you can do all the affirmations that you want and all the gratitude, and that's great and that's helpful. But it doesn't mean that those other things aren't there and aren't at work. They're still at work.
Right, and I think that that's where, because when I first started hearing about daily gratitude practices, this is a lot of years ago at this point, right? And it was kind of just bubbling to the surface. And so there's that woman who created the gratitude jar and you do it with your children. And then there was the gratitude stone and there, right. And it was all this stuff. And what came next? The backlash of that's toxic positivity and you can't fake it till you make it. And to be honest, that's a lot of why I don't talk about a gratitude practice a lot because it has been so diluted to be just grab a fluffy statement and just say it over and over, even if your heart can't relate to it at all. And so there is this finessing of just be as grateful as you can authentically get to, which might mean I'm really fucking glad he's gone today because he's pissing me off.
Right. Right.
That
That's right. And
that
it's so interesting. It kind of goes back to what you were saying about balance. Like everything can get so distorted, right? From toxic positivity to spiritual bypassing to there are all of these ways that we can use these, we can twist the tools in a way that we're actually not really doing the work. And it's not enough to just say, I'm grateful for my home. I'm grateful for the fact that he's gone. If you don't feel it in your body, it's actually not doing the work. So what you said about being authentic, you have to feel it. It's the feeling. It's not actually the words. It's the feeling that's attracting to you what you want.
Yeah. And a big part for me was so my whole life was consumed with fear by this point, even before the divorce. And then divorce, comes to light. And now I'm like, oh my God, my worst fear has come true. And so these practices, right, of trying to get my emotions and my thoughts stable on something, a lot of times those big topics were too filled with fear. Money was too filled with fear. Was this marriage going to work? Was too filled with fear. And so I could get to something general and I could get to something simple. I really love how the light hit my bed in the morning when I first woke up. And I really got very intentional. I actually have my I'm Essential coffee mug today, but I got really intentional around what does my coffee mug feel like in my hands? Do I like what it looks like? Do am I excited to go get it in the morning and have my cup of tea? Those were authentic connections to something that I appreciated that I could get to. It was nothing about my relationship. It was nothing about trying to figure out the logical answers that I needed to know. Were you gonna come back and work on it? Can we go to therapy, right? Are we getting divorced? It was too wound up in fear. I had to start simple to reconnect with me, because when you can reconnect with you, and that's the point of the yoga, the meditating, the walking, it just calms your mind enough to help you reconnect to something that you love so that you can start to sort through all of these other big fears and emotions that are in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we ask too much of ourselves. I should feel this way. This is where I want to get. I want to the, and often it's I want to get to the place where I don't feel, I'm not affected by this. I'm unaffected emotionally. And that doesn't work. We're always affected. We're going to be affected. It's that, can I learn to tolerate these feelings as they come up? Can I learn to breathe through them?
You're giving me goosebumps. I actually was journaling this week. So there's a lot of big life transitions going on for me right now as we're blending families and we're moving and, just all the pieces. All the pieces are moving. And I was about to have an appointment or a call and I was nervous and I was feeling all the anxiety. I'm like, "Ooh, okay, this is weird. Why am I not able to tap into excitement? This is a really big, cool transition that's about to happen." And I'm sitting in fear. And I couldn't force myself to get to excitement because when the fear is that big, you can't. So I can't fake, toxic positivity it. I can't grab a gratitude practice and rewire it. But what I could do is sit down in my journal and acknowledge it, write it out like, why am I scared right now? What if this doesn't work? What if I get disappointed again? What if I have to start over? These are all old stories from my divorce, right? And then it could shift into, but I'm not that person anymore. I've grown. I'm stronger. I know how to handle things. If things aren't meant to go down this path that I'm hoping we're about to go down, that's okay. It's just a pivot. It's just a transition. And that was a lot of the learning that had to happen from my divorce.
Right. And you can remember, oh, I've done that before. I've pivoted before. I've gone through hard times before. I've survived this. I can survive it.
Yeah, I can survive it. I think I actually even wrote like, I will be okay. I will be okay, whatever the answer is. I'm okay.
Yeah, that's right. And there's an interesting thing about that sort of anxiety and nervousness and excitement. They're actually very close in the way they feel in the body. And so sometimes it's hard to actually tell the difference, or you may have been really nervous and fearful, and there might have been some excitement underneath there, but the feeling is so similar and the fear was so big that you sort of didn't really notice it. But we can have a multitude of feelings at the same time.
Yeah. One of the big lessons for me was fear and excitement feel the same way, And when I read that, the, like, explosions, like, the light bulbs that went off, right? Because I was like, "Wait, what?" And then I'm like, "Oh my god, it literally is just the difference of fear means I'm afraid of what's around the corner, and excitement means, "Ugh, I'm looking forward to it." I don't in either situation, I don't know what's around the corner. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't guarantee what's gonna happen, but in one of them, I'm like, "Ooh, let's go." And in the other one, I'm like, "I can't do this."
Uh, right. They probably contribute to each other, right? Like the excitement that moving forward feels scary. And the scariness is kind of exciting, right? And it's like, which way is which way is more? But that, it's sort of, I can understand why they're so similar in the body or why we experience them as similar.
Right? Because they do feel exactly the same way. It's, like opposite ends of the same stick. I'm on the same topic or the same spinning plate. And it just depends if I want to lean into fear, which is I'm projecting that something's going to go wrong in the future, far ahead of the present moment where I'm at. Or, ooh, what could, surprise and delight me? I use that a lot too. Like, okay, universe, how do you want to surprise and delight me today? What's going to show up? Yeah, I was laughing. It was a marketing term. All the marketing meetings we used to have in corporate, right? And it was all the rage, right? How are we on social, right? Like, how are we on social media to surprise and delight our guests? How are we in customer service surprising and delighting our guests? And I was like, I want to be surprised and delighted every damn day. So let's make it happen.
Let's make it happen. I love it. Yeah, surprise and delight me. And the thing about fear too is it doesn't mean you can't do it just because you feel afraid. You don't only do things when fear is gone. It just means that to do it, it's going to take more courage.
Yes. For me, I had to spend a lot of time releasing the momentum of fear. Again, fear had taken over everything. I was afraid to go out to new restaurants because I'd often get sick, right? And there's nothing worse than being out to a restaurant and getting sick in the middle of dinner and you're not at home and you feel terrible. Or trying new places or looking stupid. Or, it starts little. I always talk about there's like a fear gremlin monster on your shoulder. And the more you feed it, the more it's whispering in your ear all the time. Ooh, who are you to do that? Do you even know what you're doing? Things could get worse. You're gonna screw this up. And the more you're, like, leaning in to listen to it, the bigger and the stronger it gets. And so, for me, I was paralyzed, like, I could not have taken action because the moment I decided to take action, I would spiral into, "Is that the right choice? What if I made the wrong choice? What if I just made it worse?" Like, and you're literally frozen because my whole nervous system was in a state of fight or flight, and it was like flighting and freezing. Okay. So I had to calm those down to even get to a place where I could just say, "Ooh, I'm feeling a little scared of this, but I can do this. I can, even if I make the wrong choice, I can fix it. We can try again." There is nothing that is definitive in life other than death and change, right?
Hmm. And it's not your job to know actually what lies way ahead. It's only your job to key into your intuition enough to know what the next right step is. Just that one step. So if you're asking yourself, okay, well, if I do this, but then what's going to happen? If you can just remind yourself, like, well, actually, that's none of my business. It's none of my business to know. I just know that this feels like the next right step for me. I'm just going to take that next right step and see. And then from there, I'll be able to see what the next right step is from there.
Yeah, because so often the reason you're trying to decide all the details is you're still trying to control. You're still trying to make sure that your heart isn't going to get hurt again. And so if you can come up with a plan that you're like, okay, this sounds really good, it has to go this way, it is in an effort to make sure that you don't get hurt again. But let's really dig into this, just the next step, because the number one thing that I hear from listeners, from the Instagram comments that come in, right? How do I know? I'm so afraid, right? I'm afraid of what it's going to do to my kids. I'm afraid of how I'm going to figure out the money. I don't know what I'm going to do for work. Where are we going to live? There's a lot of fear in this. You will not have all the answers. You just need the next step that you feel okay making.
That's right. And I understand that that is easier said than done also. And when you're in that state of fear, it's also very hard to, unless you've been practicing for a long time, to distinguish between what is fear and what is intuition.
Oh, mine were rocked. I didn't know which one was
You
which.
couldn't, I mean, and I remember saying, and part of the story that I didn't, my story that I didn't tell is that there was a 3-day period. This is how I found out that what was going on, where my husband disappeared for 3 days. And I thought he was dead. Like I didn't know what had happened. I was having to sort of normalize for my kids, but not make it too normal. I don't want them to think that this is like good behavior, but then, you know, and I remember talking to a friend of mine and he said, he's not dead. And I said, okay, I'm so afraid right now that I cannot access my intuition. So I'm going to go with your intuition. If you know that, then I'm going with that. Sometimes it's very, very hard. If you are in a completely panicked, afraid state, it is very hard to access that. And all those tools that we have are helpful, right? The writing and meditating, super, super helpful. I've always found that super helpful. And sometimes we also need our friends to help us.
Yes. And there was definitely a period when I was reliant on somebody else's intuition because I couldn't get there, right? But hearing somebody else be like, "You're gonna be okay. This is gonna work out for you. It will not hurt like this forever. There will never be a hurt as big as this again in your life." I needed that confidence, that knowing to
Mhm.
steady me. Again, I'm wobbling. I wobble, wobble. The emotions are all over. They're up, they're down. Somebody else holding that light for you, the end of the tunnel, like you're gonna make it through.
Yeah, I also had my sister-in-law said to me during those 3 days, she said to me, "You're strong." And it wasn't like, "Oh, you're strong, you're gonna get through this." It was like she was telling me something that was important for me to hear. "You're strong." And I said, "I don't feel strong right now." And she said, "I know. That's why I'm telling you."
Yeah.
And that was really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, I guess she also sensed that I needed to hear that,
Mm.
needed to hear that.
Yeah, there are so many things we need to hear during this process over and over again, and that's part of why we're here for you guys each week too, because if you're lucky enough to have friends and family that can deliver those nuggets, that's amazing. And sometimes if you're sitting there and you're like, I don't have that, that's okay too, because your friends and your family have their own emotional connection to what's happening and their own grief around the loss of your marriage. And that can sometimes cloud their response. Like I knew I couldn't go talk to my family about it. Hello, my crazy podcast family. It's time to level up your connection and become a club member. If you've loved the content but are craving answers to your specific questions, if you're looking for a way to get help when you need it, if you're ready to move from just listening to creating change in your life, it's time you became an Instagram subscriber. You'll unlock exclusive private content that you won't find anywhere else. Subscribers get VIP treatment with direct Q&A sessions, weekly lives, and the ability to get support when you need it, all on a platform you're already on. No new signups, no new websites. Just head over to our Instagram page, click that subscribe button, and join the inner circle now. Subscribe today and keep the crazy fun going. There was one, it was actually my sister-in-law as well, my brother's wife. I didn't talk to my sister. I didn't talk to my mom. I knew certain friends. If I called them, I knew which path they would run down. Like the man-hating path was one friend, the don't ever leave was another friend, right? So,
They're invested. They are, because it's painful for them to see you in pain, and they want to make their own pain go away. And the way to do that is to tell you to do something that they think might help your pain go away. So I chose two examples of people who did say things that were really helpful, but I had plenty of the other stuff. Plenty of that,
yeah, and that's part of why it's so hard too, right? You know, we're going through something that's so big and it literally overhauls every system you have spent your life building. It probably, you know, even if you're working, so I was working, but it overhauled how I could work. I couldn't just take off on a last minute trip because my boss was like, somebody needs to fly here and go observe what's happening. I couldn't do that anymore, which meant my career path was paused for a little bit, right? My money was overhauled. My support system, my ex made dinner every day because he worked early shifts. So he was always home by 3. Even last night, I was on the couch chatting with my son, and I was like, God, do I wish somebody else was just always had dinner ready for me. Like, I have to cook now. So all these pieces get an overhaul and it takes time. And some of your friends will get overhauled too. And we're here to tell you that that's part of the process. And that's part of going back to this, just what's the next step. Okay. So let's break down a couple of these because I think we've talked a lot of good topics. Okay. A friend overhaul. You call this friend. Every time you call this friend, part of you feels good. Maybe you are complaining about the ex or blaming the ex but when you get off the phone, you don't feel any better. You actually feel even sadder. You feel even lower about the situation you're in and you feel even more alone because once you hang up the phone, you realize that there's nobody else there supporting you towards moving forward. Okay? Now, a next step might be next time you get the urge to reach out and call them right away, pause and think. How did I feel last time we talked? Is this something that I just need to reflect on myself for a little bit? Or do I need to write this out in a journal for a little bit before I talk to this friend?
right. Or it's just as even as simply as, let me pause, let me take a breath. Is this a good idea for me to do right now?
Yes.
I don't even know that you need to break it down much more than that, right? Like, is this a good idea? What is going to serve me in this moment? What do I really need? Maybe you need to have a little dance party in your house. Maybe you need to meditate. Maybe you need to write some shit down, and get it all out. Maybe you need to call a different friend who's going to have a different kind of response. S- Or maybe you do need to call that friend. Maybe right now you just need to hear how wronged you were and they're going to agree with everything. And you just need that in that moment. And maybe that is what you need. But I think the pause, like the information is in the pause. The wisdom is in the pause.
Because now you're making a choice. You're not reacting to
Mhm.
old patterns and old habits. And old patterns and old habits get you more of the same thing. And so when you become deliberate around, is this serving me? Is this the right choice? Is this what I want to do? Right? Exactly like you said, is this good for me right now? That gives you the choice. So, same thing. Let's say we've got fears around, we'll go real big. I don't know if I'm supposed to file for divorce or not. Okay. There are about 1,000 steps that you need to take before you get to that answer. And one might be Googling divorce lawyers in your area and reading the reviews. And as you read those reviews, right, one of two things are going to happen. Either it's going to not feel good, it's going to make you even more scared or worried or fear based. Now, that's telling you that is not a step you're ready for. Or you're going to start to read some of the reviews and be like, huh, okay, well, that sounds kind of interesting. Maybe I want to set up a free consultation and talk to somebody. But it's again that pause. How do I feel in the moment? Does this feel good or not feel good to take one small action that helps you move forward in the face of fear?
That's right. And I think actually, when it comes to divorce, and maybe some other things as well, but it's definitely true of divorce, part of what makes it so, so scary, part of what makes it scary, is there are so many unknowns. We have no idea what we're dealing with. We have no idea what our life is going to look like. We have no idea what our finances are going to look like. We have no idea of how this is going to affect our children. There are so many unknowns. And for me, when I started thinking about maybe getting divorced and I wasn't even like ready to take that move, I went and I saw a lawyer.
Mhm.
And I said, these are all my questions, like what is the range of what could possibly happen? And she was so clear. It was like, you definitely can't expect to get X. No judge would ever approve of this, but no judge would let him get away with Y. Like it was
Yep.
like it put everything in perspective. And it was like, okay, now I know what I need to work towards. I actually have some concrete answers and I can take those questions out of out of my head, out of the what's swirling around, and I can start to take some steps or think about it differently and understand what my life could possibly look like. And then really think about it. But it's like it isolates the issues.
Yep. Yeah, because you've got to break down all those different pillars, right? Where are you going to live? Are you going to stay there? Do you want to move? What do you need to do around money? Even though I was working and I actually at that time was making more money than he was, so I was the main breadwinner. I was still nervous. I was like, how am I going to live without the second salary? I've become so accustomed to it. I had to work through my money fears. I had to get to a place where I was stable on like, I am okay with the money that's coming in. Look at me, I've paid all the bills, right? And you might sit there and be like, well, you had a salary, Erica. It doesn't matter if you have a salary or not. These fears are the same for all of us. Somebody who's making $1 million and now has to live off 250,000, which still sounds astronomical for the majority of us, is going to have a fear around how they continue to live their life. And it doesn't matter if it's that person or if it's you going from I'm a stay-at-home mom to now how am I going to pay for things and do I need to get a job? The feeling of that fear around how will I pay for things? Is my life the way I've lived it safe? Can I continue to operate the same way I have? They feel the same for all of us. It's the same work to get over that fear.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's interesting. I've heard the same story about age when it comes to getting a job or getting back on the dating scene, finding another relationship from so many different ages. Well, I'm 38. Well, I'm 48. Well, I'm 58. Well, I'm 62, like, and so nobody's going to hire me, or it's going to be really hard to find somebody who wants to be in a relationship with somebody this old, at all the stages along the way. And that may be somewhat based in reality, but it's basically a story. We all know people who at all of those ages got into a new relationship, got a job, made things happen, made things work. Maybe it was a little harder than if they were 25, but maybe not.
Right? The conditions are different, but the end result is still achievable. The happiness, the goal, the type of job or the payroll you're looking for, it's all achievable. It always goes back to, again, those conditions. Are we trying to control the conditions? We think to be happy in a relationship, we need somebody who wears a suit and earns six figures and has a good job and has a house. Okay. Or guess what? You could be very happy with a blue collar worker who shows up and does his job and comes home and enjoys his life. You can achieve your happiness in a wide range of conditions. And to figure out what they need to look like, it again is just test it out one step at a time. Does this feel better than this? Or do I like option B, right? Do I want A or do I want B? Test it out and try it. That's kind of to the point of separation. You think you want a divorce? Move out for a few weeks or a few months and see if that's really what you want.
Right, right. And I think also, like, sort of on the other end of, once the decision has been made, whether you wanted it or not, and you've moved out and you're taking steps to get divorced and you're moving into your new life, I feel like I often see this with my clients, and I felt it myself, a sense of urgency. And not only just about the financial piece, which was honestly pretty urgent. I needed to make that happen. But there was also an urgency of, like, I just spent 22 years of my life in this relationship that actually didn't feel good. And now I'm old and I need to make this happen now because I wasted all this time. And I feel like that's like a very typical post-divorce phase. I'm older now, and I'm a little like, oh, whatever, it's fine. If it happens, it happens. I'm honestly in this moment not really that interested. I don't feel the urgency. I feel maybe it'll happen later. Maybe it won't. Whatever. But I felt the real sense of urgency right after my divorce. Like, I have to find somebody. I have to be in a relationship. I have to give what I have to give in a relationship that will accommodate it.
Yes. I totally felt that as well, especially because I had waited for 2 years in the separation before I filed, right? I fought for fought for the first year, second year, I was, like, standing in my power, but, like, "Are you gonna meet me?" So when I finally decided to file, I was like, well, now you're 37. You wasted all these years. At 35, you could have, at 35, if you had just filed and done the healing work for a year, 36, you could already be in a relationship. And now you're 37 and you're just starting over. And oh, you wanted another kid. And what's going to happen, right? We, we create what I have learned. And literally, it has been a lesson that has come probably this year. So it takes some time is that we are trying to fight and get for these things because society has taught us that that's when you truly are happy. When you have the partner and you have the house and you have the six figures so that your money is flowing, right? Then you're allowed to be happy. Well, guess what? You can be happy at any time.
You can be happy at any time, and you could be unhappy with all of those things.
Right? And that was a big lesson. Like, wow, you had all those things. You guys were not happy. You were not communicating well. You weren't treating each other with respect. And it wasn't the American dream. And then you get to a place like now, the funny part is the lessons continue to come in the same you just change the story, right? I had the lesson of don't rush to a relationship. Great. Now we're not rushing to a relationship. We're enjoying the time together. And now I'm like, ooh, rush to build a business. And I was like, why? Just enjoy it. I love the fact that I get to just have these amazing conversations, to be able to bring women like you to the listeners so that they have a guide, so that they don't feel alone, right? Enjoy the ride. This is the part of life, and it's little choice by little choice, one step at a time that gets you through it.
That's right. And I want to say also, like, it's okay if you're in that state of urgency, if you're in all these big feelings about things that you want or feeling sad about what you've lost. I mean, it's super important to just be in that, but understand that this is right where you are right now. Right? I mean, even the thing about that I said about like I got divorced and I was old, like that was a sort of tongue in cheek. Like I thought I was old. Now it's 12 years later, I don't feel old, you know? So it's not it's okay to be there, but remember, you're not always going to be there.
No, you get to rewrite these stories and these belief systems that rewrite the beliefs that tell you you can't have what you want. You're not old. You're not, used goods.
You you didn't waste time.
No, because it brought you exactly where you're supposed to be. And that's a lot of, we hear these stories. Oh, if we'd met our partner earlier, we probably wouldn't have liked him because there was growth and things that had to happen and shifts that had to change. So I do want to make sure before we wrap up our chat today, if you guys are looking for help, Deborah does have coaching and she has been kind enough to have an offer for you guys. I'll let her explain it in a second. But hopefully you have found some ahas in our chat as transformation and transition. Learning how to transition into the next chapter is such a huge part. So, Deborah, tell the listeners a little bit about what opportunity they have to work with you and how they can find you.
Sure. So my coaching practice is called Photosynthesis Coaching. And I offer a free 45-minute consult. I know that's sort of unusual. A lot of coaches offer like 15 minutes or 20 minutes, but I really like to be able to give value in the consult and really get to know each other and have a not only a good sense of whether we're a good fit for working together, but also I want you to come away from it feeling that you have some tools or you had an aha moment or you just got something out of it.
Yeah.
So that's what I have for you.
I love that. A true servant's heart, right? Us coaches out there we just want to help you. So you can find more information and the link to schedule that time. It's in the show description. It's also on the blog post for this episode at thecrazyexwivesclub.com. So all of those links are right below in the episode description. Thank you, Deborah, so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure.
Yeah, right. Transitions and fears. Goodness gracious. Probably some of my top two favorite topics to talk about.
Me too. I agree.
Right. So until next week, you guys, one step at a time. Look at one small choice that you want to test out. You're not making a definitive answer. You're just saying, what if this was the step forward that I took? Give yourself a little grace in the process, and we'll be back next week with another episode. And that's it. Another great episode of the Crazy Ex-Wives Club, a podcast for women learning how to heal from their divorce. Tune in next week for more advice and tips to help you figure out life after divorce. And until then, give yourself grace, do the best you can, and know that this is all part of the process.